I, for one, welcome our Chinese overlords. Hi guys, Eric here and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be having a look at a brand new Haval H2 1.5 Turbo Luxury. This car astonishes me, particularly its cabin, and this from a manufacturer that officially launched less than 8 years ago. I am able to review the H2 thanks to the extremely friendly, knowledgeable and helpful staff here at Haval Heidelberg. They have the latest range of products from the Haval H1 all the way to the GWM-P series and everything in between. They are located in Strand and open for business. Be sure to pop in and have a look. Their address and contact information is in the description box below. Haval is the SUV arm of parent company GWM, or Great Wall Motors. It was officially launched worldwide in March 2017. In South Africa, it was made available a couple of years later in May 2017. The first model to be launched was the H2, followed shortly by the H6C, and then a year later, Haval launched both its smallest offering, the H1, which is really a rebadged GWM M4, and its biggest offering, the H9. Internationally, most Haval models have two styles, red label and blue label. Red labels have conservative front and rear end styling, while the blue labels feature more aggressive front and rear ends. Rear ends. Now locally, the H2's history and spec is rather different. As I understand it, the H2 red label debuted internationally in 2014. In 2016, the H2 blue label was released as a different spec. However, in South Africa, the red label was released in May 2017, with the blue label introduced as the facelift to the red label. This is why I think the infotainment screen seems a bit outdated compared to its contemporaries. Personally, I didn't think too much of this brand, and all other Chinese brands for that matter. Its styling seemed a bit derivative. I remember seeing a couple of photos of the H2's interior in Car Magazine and really liking the design, even though I didn't particularly like the red label's front end. With this facelift, however, the front seems more modern, crisp and butch. Kind of reminds me of a Ford EcoSport. I also enjoy the addition of chrome bars running across the grille. The rear looks good too, reminding me a bit of the Suzuki Vitara. I particularly like the H2 in this gorgeous blue color. It gives it a certain youthful appearance. Added to that, the 18-inch alloy wheels, LED daytime running lights, and chrome surrounds around the window frames, and you end up with a car that looks way more expensive than it is. And it really is inexpensive, with the entry-level City with a manual transmission costing 294,900 Rand, and this top-of-the-range luxury automatic costing a mere 354,000. The main event, however, is found when you get in it. One thing you need to know about me, the quality and look of an interior is much more important to me than that of the exterior. And this is where the Chinese have always struggled a bit. Standard equipment was there, but build quality as well as the quality of the materials used was subpar. With the H2, however, especially at this price point, it dominates its sector. The design of this cabin is really attractive. I really like these two big dials surrounded by a myriad of ergonomically sound button arrangements for the climate control and the stereo. I also love the integrated infotainment screen, even with the matte black plastic surrounds. I really prefer it to Mercedes-Benz's tablet-like attachment. Then there is the off-white trim, underlined by a thin metal strip found on the dash as well as the doors. It really helps to lift the cabin. Move your gaze upwards and you're rewarded with a fully automatic panoramic sunroof with electric sunshade. To put this into perspective, the sunshade of the previous generation Mercedes-Benz CLS was manual. The dashboard is finished in very trendy black piano plastic trim and framed by the same thin metal strip. The steering wheel is a marriage of excellent design, quality materials, and attention to detail. Everything you see is really pleasing to the eye. This is only a fraction of the whole story, however. It's quite easy to make a cabin look attractive and unassuming. It is also really easy to throw technology and standard spec at it. What isn't easy is to engineer every button to give good feedback, every dial to give the right amount of resistance, every door to feel heavy and expensive. What isn't easy is to allow all these elements to melt together into a whole. The H2, however, with the exception of a couple of quirks, really does achieve this, and then some. Fit and finish is at the very least on par with its rivals. I couldn't find any inconsistent panel gaps. I am pleasantly surprised by this, especially considering my very own Chrysler 300C has some inconsistent panel gaps present, and that premium car came out the same year as this H2. Look a bit closer and you can tell that a lot of attention has been paid to the details. This feels like a premium product. It is enforced by the finishing of the cup holders, the steering wheel, the window switches, and these beautiful, intricate designs on the speaker covers on top of the dash. The dampening to the glove box as well as the center storage area adds to this feeling. I remember that not so long ago, on some Chinese offerings, you could cut yourself accidentally on one of the door cards. Haval really has separated itself from the pack. This steering wheel deserves a mention all of its own. Even though the rim isn't wrapped in soft Napa leather, it is a cut above the rest. It is finished in very trendy black piano plastics and real metal trim. Even the Haval logo has a brushed aluminium effect. Then at the bottom of the steering wheel, in its own metal frame, you find the H2 logo. All the buttons on the steering wheel give great feedback and are ergonomically very well thought out. The stalks to the wipers and indicators are beautifully dampened and an absolute joy to use. Build quality is really good, at least after initial inspection. With the exception of a bit of wiggle in the center console, everything feels beautifully put together. The doors feel solid and heavy, and close with a very German-esque thud. Once closed, you realize just how well this cabin is insulated from the outside world. All the buttons give great feedback, and all the dials, even those you won't necessarily use that often, offer the perfect amount of resistance. Everything, or almost everything, you operate brings a smile to your face. The biggest surprise this car offers, however, is the level of materials used. I was expecting a lot, especially considering this is a very competitive segment, but oh my gosh, the materials used in this car belongs on much more expensive vehicles, particularly the metals. In the Haval, if it looks like metal, it probably is, and there is a lot of it. So much so that I used my wedding ring to test the authenticity of some of these trim pieces. But they really are metal. The dials for the stereo and climate control have real metal surrounds. Even the seat adjusters for the electric driver's seat has real metal surrounds. The H2 isn't available with the leather option, but the vinyl wrapped seats are of such high quality that I really can't tell the difference. Then there is the plush plastics found on top of the dash, on top of the front doors, and even on top of the rear doors. Lastly, there's the key. It offers the perfect amount of weight, and all the buttons and trim is, you guessed it, made out of real metal. And this on a car that is 20,000 Rand less expensive than the equivalent EcoSport. When it comes to storage, the Haval performs admirably. The glove box is on the small side though, and the door pockets in the front are average. But you get a closable storage area in front of the gear lever, two very deep and wide front cup holders, and a wide as well as deep storage area underneath the center armrest. This armrest can move forward and backward for extra driving comfort. Operating this armrest gives testament to just how far the Chinese have come when it comes to build quality. It feels fantastic. Let's talk practicality. Get in the back and things are damn near perfect. The rear seats are raised slightly so you have a great view out the front. Combine that with the low window line and children will be more than happy riding in the H2. There is ample knee as well as headroom, even with the panoramic sunroof eating into headspace. What's more, you have your very own center armrest with two cup holders. The only thing missing is rear climate vents, and I would have preferred slightly bigger door pockets. The boot, however, is a different story. At 300 litres, it is quite a bit smaller than its rivals, and with the exception of a retractable loading cover, it is just a space. There is no tethering hooks, no grocery hooks, no 12-volt socket, just a space. Thankfully, the rear seats can fold almost completely flat in a 60-40 split, and the utility space grows considerably. You also get a spare wheel, there is no load lip to lift heavy things over, and there is a chrome scuff plate to protect the rear bumper. Still, when it comes to space itself, it is behind its chief rivals. There are some other letdowns too. The door's grab handles feel a tad too cheap and look just a bit too utilitarian. It clashes with the rest of the cabin. The switches that lock and unlock the doors are also a bit too big, and operating them results in a very hollow sound emanating from all the doors. Then there is the electric mirror adjuster. It really looks like an aftermarket unit. It doesn't match the rest of the cabin in font size or font shape. The center console is really well thought out, but the hazard button sits just a bit too low. But I'm sure you will get used to that after a while. I really like the look of this deeply sanded plastic trim that surrounds the window switches, but it isn't present anywhere else in the cabin, so it distracts a bit from the theme of cohesion. The rev counter and the speedometer looks really attractive, but the actual digits are a bit too small, so it makes it a bit more difficult to read while on the move. Lastly, the infotainment system's graphics is a bit out of date and it lacks Android Auto. What helps to make up for it is the standard specification, especially on this Lux model. And there is a lot. Power steering, electric parking brake, auto hold, automatic headlights and wipers, cruise control, rear park distance control, reversing camera, front and rear electric windows, panoramic sunroof, a full color 7-inch infotainment system with Apple CarPlay, and a driver's information display in between the two dials. You even get single zone automatic climate control and 18-inch wheels as standard. Now you might think that all these extra electronic equipment are just more things that could break, but you needn't worry, because as standard, every H2 gets a 5-year 100,000 kilometer warranty, a 5-year 60,000 kilometer service plan, and a 5-year unlimited mileage roadside assistance plan. Next up are the safety systems. Tire pressure monitor, traction control, ABS with electronic brake distribution, hill descent control, hill hold assist, 6 airbags, and electronic stability program, a very important feature. And if all that fails, you have the peace of mind to know that this car scored the maximum 5 stars from ANCAP, the Australian version of Euro NCAP. So how does all of this translate onto the road? If I had to sum up driving the H2 into one word, that word would be adequate. Driving the H2 around town is really easy, especially with an automatic transmission. The steering is light but isn't numb, and the brakes that are ventilated discs at front and disc brakes at the rear are strong and progressive. It is worth noting, however, that there is quite a lot of foot travel before the brakes start to take, and that takes some getting used to. Low speed ride is very good for a car in its class, and the suspension doesn't crash unnecessarily over bumps. The cabin is also nice and quiet, and there isn't any rattle presence either. The turning circle isn't too wide, so maneuvering around tight spaces won't strike fear into your heart. Out on the open road, and the experience remains good, again on par with its rivals. At highway speed, some road noise does enter the cabin, but it isn't deafening at all, and the suspension does a great job of soaking up the bumps. The engine, a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged unit, produces 105 kilowatt and 202 newton meters of torque. It won't blow off your socks or anything, but it is more than enough to overtake when the opportunity arises. Out on the twisties, and the H2 holds its own. I wouldn't call it fun to drive, but it gets the job done in a progressive and safe way. The steering feels natural, and there isn't too much body lean in the corners. One thing that I did notice, however, is that the gearbox tends to hunt a bit, especially at lower speeds. Even a light press of the throttle results in a downshift. I wouldn't really call it much of a drawback, only something that I've noticed while driving. Fuel consumption could be better, however. With an average figure of 9 litres per 100 kilometers, there are more frugal options out there, even if they are a bit more expensive. It really feels to me as though this car was made with me in mind. I've always been interested in the interior of cars. This is one of the main reasons why I used to stay away from Chinese brands. While inspecting the H2, however, I said no way and wow more than once. It made me smile. I can wholeheartedly stand behind the H2. It isn't perfect, no car is, but it is astonishing what Haval has achieved in such a short amount of time. Seriously, well done, Haval.